Carol thought she was losing her mind trying to understand her husband's symptoms. One day, he'd forget how to use the coffee maker. The next, he'd remember every detail about their 1985 vacation. His doctor said probable Alzheimer's, but David's symptoms didn't match what Carol read about the disease. Then David had a stroke, and suddenly everything made sense. The MRI revealed brain changes in multiple areas, vascular damage from small strokes, plus early Alzheimer's changes, plus some areas that looked like Lewy body disease. Mixed dementia, the neurologist said. If you're watching someone whose dementia symptoms don't fit the typical patterns, today's video might explain what you're really seeing. Mixed dementia is actually the most common form of cognitive decline in people over 80, but it's the least talked about. Mixed dementia occurs when someone has brain changes from 2 or more types of dementia at the same time. For Carol's husband David, it explained why his symptoms seemed to jump around and why traditional Alzheimer's information didn't match their experience. The most common combination is Alzheimer's disease with vascular dementia, memory problems from protein buildup combined with thinking problems from reduced blood flow to the brain. But mixed dementia can include any combination. Alzheimer's with Lewy body disease, vascular dementia with frontotemporal changes, or even 3 or 4 types affecting different brain regions. What shocked Carol was learning that mixed dementia might actually be more common than pure single-type dementia, especially in people over 80. Research suggests that up to 50% of people with dementia have mixed pathology in their brains, but most get diagnosed with just one type because that's how our medical system is set up. David's neurologist explained it this way. Imagine your brain as a house, and different types of dementia are like different kinds of damage: electrical problems, plumbing issues, structural damage. Most older houses have multiple problems at once, and that's what we're seeing in David's brain. For Carol, this diagnosis was actually a relief. It explained why David would have days of clarity followed by sudden confusion, why he could remember their wedding song perfectly but couldn't figure out how to turn on the television. The mixed pathology meant different brain systems were affected at different rates. The challenge with mixed dementia is that there's no single playbook for families to follow. Carol couldn't just read about Alzheimer's or just learn about vascular dementia. She needed to understand how multiple disease processes were affecting David simultaneously and how they might interact with each other. Understanding mixed dementia also explained why some treatments worked better for David than others, and why his progression didn't follow the predictable pattern that single-type dementia families often experience. Mixed dementia gets missed because our medical system is designed to identify single diseases, not complex combinations. Carol spent 2 years getting conflicting opinions because different specialists focused on different aspects of David's symptoms. The cardiologist saw David's blood pressure issues and talked about vascular cognitive impairment. The neurologist noticed memory problems and suggested Alzheimer's disease. The geriatrician mentioned movement issues that looked like Parkinson's. Nobody was looking at the complete picture until David's stroke forced comprehensive brain imaging. Insurance and diagnostic systems are built around single diagnoses. Carol learned that David could get medications for Alzheimer's disease or treatments for vascular dementia, but there wasn't a specific treatment protocol for someone with both conditions simultaneously. Many families never get the mixed dementia diagnosis because it requires advanced brain imaging that isn't always covered or available. Standard cognitive testing might show impairment, but it can't distinguish between different types of brain pathology causing the problems. Carol realized she'd been trying to fit David's symptoms into neat categories when the reality was much more complex. When she read that memory problems meant Alzheimer's, but David also had movement issues and visual hallucinations, she thought something was being missed. It turns out everything was connected, just in a more complicated way than single disease models suggest. The biggest barrier Carol encountered was that most educational resources and support groups focus on specific dementia types. Mixed dementia families often feel like they don't fit anywhere because their loved ones' symptoms cross multiple categories. Healthcare providers sometimes avoid the mixed dementia diagnosis because it's more complicated to explain and treat. It's easier to say Alzheimer's disease than to explain how 3 different disease processes are affecting someone's brain simultaneously. Understanding how mixed dementia differs from single-type dementia helped Carol adjust her expectations and caregiving approach. The progression patterns are much less predictable when multiple disease processes are involved. In single-type dementia, families often see gradual, somewhat predictable decline in specific abilities. Alzheimer's typically starts with memory problems and progresses in stages. Vascular dementia often shows stepwise decline after strokes. Mixed dementia combines these patterns unpredictably. David would have periods that looked like classic Alzheimer's progression, forgetting recent events while remembering distant memories clearly. But then he'd have sudden drops in function that resembled vascular dementia, or episodes of confusion and hallucinations that suggested Lewy body involvement. Carol learned that mixed dementia often progresses faster than single-type conditions because multiple disease processes compound each other's effects. David's vascular problems reduced blood flow to brain areas already damaged by protein deposits, accelerating his cognitive decline. The symptom combinations in mixed dementia can be confusing for families. David might have a great memory day, but struggle with movement, or have clear thinking but visual disturbances. Carol stopped trying to predict good days and bad days because different brain systems were affected differently. Before we continue, if this information is helping you understand confusing dementia symptoms, please hit that subscribe button. Mixed dementia families often feel isolated because their experience doesn't match typical dementia resources, and your support helps content like this reach more families who need it. Treatment responses are also different in mixed dementia. Medications that help with Alzheimer's symptoms might not address vascular or Lewy body components. Carol learned to work with David's medical team to address multiple aspects of his condition rather than expecting one-size-fits-all solutions. Caring for someone with mixed dementia requires flexible strategies because you're managing multiple conditions that may need different approaches on different days. Carol developed what she called adaptive caregiving, based on which aspects of David's condition were most prominent at any given time. Carol learned to assess David daily and adjust her approach accordingly. On days when his vascular symptoms were prominent, confusion, difficulty with planning, she simplified tasks and provided more structure. When Alzheimer's type memory problems dominated, she focused on routine and familiar activities. During periods with Lewy body-like symptoms, hallucinations, or movement issues, she emphasized safety and comfort. Communication strategies had to be equally flexible. Sometimes David responded well to logical explanations. Other times, he needed redirection or validation of his altered perceptions. Carol stopped trying to use the same approach every day and instead learned to meet David where he was based on which brain systems seemed to be functioning best. Activity planning became creative and diverse. Carol kept a variety of engagement options available: puzzles for good cognitive days, music for emotional connection, gentle movement activities when his physical symptoms were manageable, and simple sensory experiences when complex tasks were too challenging. Safety planning was more complex because mixed dementia can create unpredictable combinations of symptoms. David might have good judgment but poor motor control one day, or excellent physical abilities but poor decision-making the next. Carol had to prepare for multiple types of safety concerns rather than focusing on one primary risk. Carol found that mixed dementia support came from connecting with multiple communities: Alzheimer's groups for memory strategies, stroke survivor groups for vascular issues, and Parkinson's communities for movement concerns. No single resource addressed everything she was experiencing. The key insight Carol gained was that mixed dementia caregiving requires accepting uncertainty and focusing on quality of life rather than trying to fit into predetermined patterns. She learned to celebrate David's remaining abilities across all domains rather than mourning losses in any single area. Most importantly, Carol realized that David's mixed diagnosis explained his complexity but didn't define his limitations. Even with multiple conditions affecting his brain, he remained capable of joy, connection, and meaningful experiences. When Carol adapted her approach to support all aspects of his changing abilities. Mixed dementia might be complicated to understand, but getting the right diagnosis helped Carol provide better care for David and reduced her own confusion about his changing symptoms. If your loved one's dementia doesn't fit typical patterns, ask about comprehensive evaluation for mixed pathology. I've included additional mixed dementia resources in the description below. What resonates with your experience? Are you seeing symptom combinations that don't fit single diagnoses? Share in the comments to help other families recognize mixed dementia patterns. If this video helped clarify confusing dementia symptoms, subscribe for more content addressing the complex realities of dementia caregiving. For more about specific dementia types, watch this video about vascular dementia or this one about Lewy body disease. I'll see you there.